Call the Honourable Member Richard Prosser.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'm pleased to rise on behalf of New Zealand First to take a call on the second reading of the Border Processing, Trade, Single Window and Duties Bill. New Zealand First supported this bill to the Select Committee in the first instance because, although we had some, not exactly misgivings as such, but some concerns as to what course the government might choose to take with regards to biosecurity in particular, following the passing of this bill into law, should the House in its wisdom decide that that is in fact the appropriate course of action. However, in spite of those concerns, we supported the aims of the bill and we felt that it was well intentioned and that if it worked as advertised it would be a beneficial thing for importers and exporters, travellers and the government alike. So we wanted to see what the Select Committee had to say about it and what the submitters had to say. We note that the Select Committee has indeed recommended a number of changes, that the bill should proceed with a number of amendments, and these we believe are eminently sensible, and that they will streamline and improve the bill and make it a better functioning and a more well-oiled piece of legislation. So, Mr Speaker, I'm happy to report that New Zealand First will continue with our support for the bill in line with the recommendations of the Select Committee. The Committee recommends amendment of clauses 2.5, 5, 36 and clause 1 of Schedule 1 relating to the commencement of the Act to make it clear that the Act, other than those provisions relating to the Joint Border Management System, would come into force on the day immediately after the expiry of the 3-month period that begins on the date on which this Act receives the Royal Assent. This, we feel, is a very sound and sensible approach on the part of the Select Committee. With regards to the requirement to consult industry groups, the Committee recommended inserting into Clause 15 of the Bill a further amendment to Section 118 of the Customs and Excise Act 1996, which would make consultation mandatory with representatives of groups whose interests are likely to be substantially affected by proposed changes to regulations governing the minimum level of duty. The advice to the Select Committee was that this would be consistent with the approach taken in other legislation. It would also make the bill consistent with other regulation making provisions of the Customs and Excise Act 1996, for example, sections 34A, 40A and 50A relating to fees and charges. Consistency is a fine thing in legislation, Mr Speaker, and if there could be more of it, that would be a good thing. We commend the Committee for this most sensible suggestion, which we wholeheartedly support. More important still is the essence of the amendment, which is to make consultation itself mandatory. Consultation lies at the heart of robust democracy, as is impressed upon us every day here in this House through the operation of the Select Committee process itself. Quite apart from the fundamental right of people to be at the very least informed and for preference consulted on such matters of state which may concern them, consultation with interest groups and interested parties frequently brings information and perspective which governments and their advisers may not have known or may simply not have thought of. It makes for better lawmaking, Mr Speaker. It makes for better laws and better regulations and a better functioning government within a better functioning democracy. Again, we applaud the Select Committee for their foresight in this regard. With regards to levy orders, the Committee has recommended inserting a new clause, 46A, into the bill to amend Section 141G and 141H of the Biosecurity Act 1993 in order to provide more clearly for the making of levy orders to impose or allow the imposing of different levy rates for different services or functions under the Act, and to help make it clear that an order could set the rate or rates for a specified period, for example a levy year. This change would avoid doubt and reflect the fact of the two current levy rates. Flexibility is as important a factor in healthy legislation as its consistency, Mr Speaker, and again it is a recommendation for an amendment with which we find ourselves in complete agreement. But perhaps the most complex of the changes recommended by the Committee concerns the de minimis provision for imports. The Select Committee considered the de minimis provision for import consignments, and particularly how it affects our retail environment. The New Zealand Customs Service does not collect duty on parcels and consignments valued below the de minimis, which we are advised is currently incurring $60 in duty, because the per transaction compliance and administrative costs of calculating, processing and collecting the revenue are disproportionate to the government revenue on the goods. Patently, this is unfair and makes very little sense. If a parcel or consignment attracts only the goods and services tax of 15%, it will be subject to the de minimis if it is valued at approximately $399 or less. If tariff duty is also payable, the de minimis will apply at a lower consignment value, which is entirely fair in our view. The Committee accepted, and we share their view, that the provision of an online customer purchase option promotes a competitive retail environment, encouraging retailers to become more efficient. The rapid growth in New Zealanders' offshore purchasing of goods online, costing less than $399, places many traditional retailers, who have to charge GST on their retail goods, at a disadvantage. The Retailers Association estimates that the de minimis provision results in foregone revenue estimated to be around $300 million annually. Many factors influence a consumer's decision whether to shop in person or online, and the GST charged by a domestic retailer is only one of them. Under current systems, if the de minimis exemption were very low, monitoring incoming goods and collecting taxes due could require a large organisation, the committee observed, such as in their revenue department perhaps, costing more than any revenue collected. The committee were advised that the current border technology cannot collect GST and tariff duty effectively on imports valued at less than $399, although there are various ways to monitor them, including random checks, which are being examined by an interdepartmental group. Under current law, customs rely upon an honest declaration of value to establish taxes due. Perish the thought. This is a complicated subject, and we are aware that the Inland Revenue Department, Treasury and Customs will soon be releasing a discussion paper on collecting GST on goods and services purchased online. We look forward to reading and digesting that paper in the fullness of time, Mr Speaker. We are told that it will include the revenue collection issues raised by the de minimis threshold and distinguish sectors that are variously affected by online purchasing. In conclusion, Mr Speaker, whilst we are committed to remaining vigilant insofar as our scrutiny of this government's biosecurity operations are concerned, we are satisfied that this is a bill with which we are largely in agreement, and we are happy to support its passage through the House. Thank you.
Dr. Paul Hutchison.
Mr Speaker, it's a great pleasure